This is a video reply to Ellie from Relax with Ellie, the video named You Got Your Foot on Everybody's Neck. Alright? So, I've been trying to figure out the way to be able to break down, exactly how to explain my abilities. Alright? And the funny thing is, an example came to my mind because I was thinking, alright, if I were to go ahead and explain the closest way that my abilities work to any character that's been portrayed in cinema, how would I be able to go ahead and break it down in a way that would be easiest for people to understand? And the funny thing is, it's not the character that you'd really think, alright? Funny thing. Do you remember when the reboot of the Men in Black series, where they had Chris Hemsworth as one of the agents? Alright. Well, there was one that was heavily based on time travel, alright? And there was this character, and ironically enough, the way I've been treated very much so also fits that. This character named Griffin, alright? That's able to tell the cause and effect of every single event, alright? So we're talking basically take chaos theory and the butterfly effect, combine them together, and see the way that everything is going to end up unfolding based on the people involved, the scenario, the end goal, and the desired outcome. Alright? And it's scary how much that ends up lining up. Now, I'm also able to go ahead and sense when there is somebody there, even if there's not there. Alright? So, spirits, ghosts, so many paranormal events I can't even break down to you. I've had so many throughout my entire life, even before the coma, But the fucked up thing is, it seems like the coma was a fixed event regardless, alright? Now, I'm also able to go ahead and sense within a certain proximity when there's somebody else that either A, has abilities, even if those abilities are dormant, B, has abilities that they're actively capable of using, C, has abilities but are completely unaware of the factor that they have that ability, while simultaneously that ability being strong enough to go ahead and take the wheel without that person realizing that their ability is taking the wheel. Alright? Or D, ultimately, if somebody with abilities is going ahead and basically put a target on that person's back. Alright? In other words, if somebody with abilities is pretty much gun-ho coming for them. Alright? Now, another factor. Conceptualizing. Alright? So, for example, not too long ago, I ended up going ahead and just flipping the fuck out in a video. Alright? And clarified exactly, if shit comes to blows in real life, exactly the point that I'm at. Especially because when it comes down to the deterioration of my mobility, because ultimately there had been a lot of muscular degeneration, because of obviously when you end up in a coma and you're not actively using your muscles and everything, you those muscles have to go ahead and relearn how to work, you know? Like, I mean, understand, it wasn't predicted that I'd even be capable of even standing. Like, neck down shouldn't be able to work, alright? So the fact that I had enough willpower to be able to do the physical therapy and relearn everything, you know? And then go ahead and learn more than I did before the coma. Like, it has medical professionals stumped, alright? So, funny thing is, when people end up finding out, like, wait, you're into geeky shit? You know, you're not just into music, you're also into geeky shit? Hell yeah, I'm into geeky shit. To be honest with you, I honestly don't think I'd have been able to unlock the full capacity of my abilities if it wasn't for that geeky shit. You know? Like, it's hilarious, because, alright, an example that I would end up giving you. You live in Vegas, right? Funny thing is, people end up freaking out and being like, you know, oh, Vegas is the place that you go to end up getting corrupted and everything. Like, what could potentially you end up doing in Vegas? The only thing that you could end up doing in Vegas is something that would end up being completely nefarious, or, you know, would be nothing but trouble. That could be no good that could end up coming from it. Really? You want to make bet on that? Because if I was able to go to Vegas, I would go ahead and demonstrate my abilities, alright? Try to go ahead and get Penn and Teller to go ahead and break down, like, hey, how did I do it? How did I do it? I'm demonstrating it for you, right in front of you. Like, how did I do it? Alright? Not to mention that, but the other one, I would absolutely love to build a fucking battle bot. Alright? Like, I ended up getting so mad in that video that I ended up breaking down the way that would actually be able to build a functional exoskeleton. Alright? That would end up going ahead and acting as leg braces to be able to support me enough that I wouldn't need this anymore. Alright? But that functional leg braces that would act as an exoskeleton could simultaneously end up enhancing, you know, my ability to kick. Which, keep in mind, ironically enough, growing up, yes, I was bullied, but the way that I would go ahead and get my anger out was the fact that in the basement of the house I grew up in had a heavy bag. So I would go ahead and kickbox. Alright? So, didn't train with anybody, but did kickboxing for about 12 years. Every time somebody would piss me off, I'd come home, go and just, you know, punch and kick the ever loving shit out of that heavy bag. Alright? So, 12 years of getting to learn proper form, you know, how to be able to maximize the amount of, you know, pressure that I'd end up getting, you know, based on the specific point, you know, with the either the shin or the foot to be able to get the maximum impact. Alright? When I went to go break down to my uncle, you know, basically the materials that I would end up needing to be able to make those leg braces, you know, the process that I would have to do, you know, with the welding and all that, to be able to properly make them where they'd be able to attach on and come off of the boots that I would end up getting to put them on, you know, as well as the pressure plate, you know, that would end up, you know, with a spring recoil system, you know, the actual bottom of the foot. I think his mind was blown. Because it's like, wait. So the materials that you would need to get would be about less than 4,000. But those leg braces actually have a functional medical prosthetic use. And that medical prosthetic use not only would be useful to you, but could actually end up going ahead and increasing the motor function of people with multiple sclerosis and, other, neurological and muscular degenerative diseases. Yep. So wait, if you were able to think up a functional prosthetic that would actually even enhance someone's motor function, you were able to think up a solution, and the solution that would end up going ahead and costing less than 4,000 or around 4,000. You know, that's a fix. Yeah. How come you were able to think it up, but medical professionals aren't? Because ultimately, the pharmaceutical industry has a much greater, profit margin with maintenance, than they would by actually offering a solution. Ultimately, would end up going ahead and eating away at their profit margin. So wait, a fix is possible. At least a maintenance tool that could end up elongating somebody's motor functions. And you thought that up? Yeah. Yeah. And that ends up bringing it back to the whole, really, why does that surprise you? Like, I literally want to build a battle bot and bring it to Vegas and compete. Like, that really shows how little you know me, while simultaneously acting like you know me. Oh no, that shit right there just drives me wild. Like, that's a level of assumption that I think you're coming to realize. Like, you thought you knew me inside and out. You wanted to claim you knew me inside and out and everything. But you're really nowadays getting to learn how little you really fucking know me. Maybe you would have gotten to know me better if it wasn't for all the group homes and all that shit. Maybe realizing, like, oh shit, like, you know what? Like, maybe if I'd been able to go ahead and see during those years, what was really going down, and getting to, actually know you a little better rather than just thinking about me, what I got going on in life, where I want my life to go going forward, or thinking that I got all the answers, thinking that there's nobody that knows better than me. Maybe I would have noticed that shit sooner. And maybe something could have been done that would have been mutually beneficial. Maybe. But you were too busy trying to make sure that I couldn't progress forward in life unless it was in a way that you could potentially profit. If you're wanting to go ahead and siphon my resources away from me, I'm not going to fucking help you. If you're going to go ahead and help me be able to get the resources that I want to, and ultimately actually legitimately be in my corner rather than performatively be in my corner, then ultimately I would have had no problem. And like, yeah, no, you've been looking out since way back in the day, and you weren't trying to be predatory about it either. You were being genuine. You genuinely had belief in me, and had my fucking back. If that would have been the case, that'd be a circumstance where it's like, yo, you got nothing to worry about. If I got nothing to worry about, you got nothing to worry about. But you can let things play out like that. And instead you had to go ahead and make it a fucking pissing contest and, oh no, like, I'm gonna gatekeep the fuck out of you. Let's go ahead and see how that works out. Like, why don't you go ahead and show me how that ends up being beneficial to anybody? Because the only thing that I see is by you attempting to make me lose. You're trying to make everybody lose because of the fact that I'm actually the one person in the situation that isn't a greedy, self-indulgent prick. So, everybody would end up being able to benefit, but you and everybody else don't want anybody to benefit unless you can control the trajectory. And you don't like the fact that I'm not letting you do that. So, here we end up going ahead and being at an impasse because ultimately, you can't legitimately celebrate another motherfucker. You gotta go ahead and just be like, no, I need to go ahead and be the one to be calling shots and everything like that. My dude, you can't even get your own shit in order. What the fuck makes you think that you'd be able to go ahead and get your shit in order, my shit in order, and be able to legitimately have a solid foundation? When meantime, the only thing that ended up allowing you to be able to even get as much of a foundation as you had was by going ahead and, taking part in pilfering from the younger generation. And hoping that ultimately none of us would end up finding out until y'all already ended up dying, so that way you couldn't end up getting held accountable. Like, that's some pathetic ass bullshit. Like, I got no fucking respect for that. But apparently, if I go ahead and lay it out like that, I'm the asshole. I'm fucking tired of the fake love bullshit. It's like, listen, if you don't support what the fuck I do, if you don't support what I'm capable of, and you're just gonna be here being fucking jealous and petty and shit about the fact that I ended up going ahead and spending my time learning into some other shit than what you personally believe is the way to do things because it's just the way that they've always been done. Then listen, you need to go the way of the dinosaur. Alright? Ultimately, there's two different directions that could be gone. Evolution or extinction. Alright? And to be able to strive for evolution, you need to accept change, and that progression needs to happen. And ultimately, progression is going to happen whether it involves you or not. So if you choose not to go ahead and embrace the progression, the only thing that's going to end up happening is you end up falling into the past. You keep falling into the past, ultimately there's not going to be any forward movement. So, I mean, you could go ahead and dwell and think about, ultimately the role you ended up playing in the good old days, or, how advice, based on what you experienced ended up going ahead and translating. But no matter what, there's always going to be that variable of the advancement in technology that ends up going ahead and making the difference of what you had to experience growing up and, what leg up or leg down you ended up having, in comparison to, me who literally grew up with technology and everything and went to utilize that to the best of my capability in every single standard. Ultimately, I understood the fact that while you were going ahead and learning out of textbooks, which ultimately there was a new edition every year, the progressions that I ended up going ahead and seeing the entirety of my life has basically been live action, instantaneous, and understanding once technology ended up getting a foothold in general society, that ultimately it was one of those, everything was going to end up speeding up. Like, it was going to be one of those situations, you got to hit the ground running, you got to keep running. Ultimately, the rat race just got a hell of a lot quicker. So you keep up, head the direction that you want to go, understand where you fit in, and get in where you fit in, or fall by the wayside. There is no other option. But apparently you go ahead and lay that factor out too, because, people being like, oh, the elders, elders with the wisdom and everything like that. Really, because y'all are the last people that want to go ahead and Google some shit, you know, and just want to automatically act like you got the answers. But then I go ahead and the search engine double check, fact check you in live time, like in real time, and you end up getting pissed off when I say, nope, you're not wrong. Expert sources end up saying. So then, not only are you not coming off as the wise elder, but you're also literally just showing how much of a fucking clown you really are, because you're not willing to take the time to go ahead and, do your research. But I end up having to go ahead and do your research for you, because ultimately what you're saying just sounds completely disconnected from reality. And that's coming from me. And the funny thing is, people act like my ability should be, my bread and butter. That's what I should have to do in life, And it's like, listen, just because of being able to do something that nobody else is apparently able to do, that doesn't change the factor that there are other things that I'm good at, like really fucking good at. Because I've always believed in trying to take my weak points and trying to make them a strength. I mean, ultimately, I'm far from a one-trick pony. But I'm going to use any advantage that I have that's a moral and ethical advantage to my advantage. Regardless of what anybody else tries to do to try to throw a wrench in my plans. But if they're throwing a wrench in my plans, and they did something unmoral or unethical or illegal in order to be able to do that, I'm going to call that shit right the fuck out. And point out why the fuck, even though they thought they could do that they can't. And ultimately people end up getting pissed off when they have to face the consequences of their actions, because they ended up getting a God complex and thinking like, oh, there's no, I'm going to do this because I felt like doing it, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. All right. Listen, I ain't got to stop you. The law could go ahead and do that for me. I just got to go ahead and point out like, yo, I'm not about to let you pull this shit on me. So now you made a decision, you took an action, now you got to face the consequences of that action, good or bad. So that's just generally the stance that I got. And the funny thing is, the lengths that people have gone to also to try to be like, oh, you're wrong for smoking weed, or you're wrong for believing in the, medicinal benefits of smoking weed. And it's like, yo, you're wrong for not going ahead and learning up the research on, the medical benefits of weed. Like, for example, when it comes down to the side effects from certain medications and everything, medical marijuana actually being able to go ahead and, reduce the impact. So you're telling me that if a chemo patient wants to go ahead and smoke a blunt, that they're a fucking drug addict and a junkie? Because it sounds to me like, there's somebody that just wants to be able to, after medication that just puts them through the fucking ringer, wants to be able to go ahead and, not constantly be, sick, vomiting, wants to be able to hold some food down, and wants to not be in a complete and utter pain because of having to go ahead and endure the physical pain that ends up coming along with wherever their cancer is. Also, you think somebody with neurological, like their neurological system being damaged and everything, and their nervous system being completely fucked up because of, nerve endings going ahead and being damaged, that they should have to suffer through that pain? And that them smoking the plant in comparison to, taking a pharmaceutical that ends up going ahead and causing a lot more damage than the actual benefits that it ends up bringing to the table? You think that's wrong? I think ultimately you've watched Reefer Madness one too many times. That's what the fuck I think on your end, you know? And you can't even go ahead and bring up the religious factor of it because it's like, yo, Genesis, anything of the ground with seeds is of God. So, I mean, ultimately, if you want to go ahead and try to act like religiously, smoking weed is wrong, it's like, no, it kind of sounds like, in biblical days, that burning bush might have been a metaphor for more than just, a bush that was on fire talking to somebody, It sounds like that burning bush might have been spiritual device for enlightenment. But, hey, if I go ahead and say that apparently, I'm in support of the corruption of, and the moral degeneracy of my generation, and automatically I should be made an example of to go ahead and be persecuted, ostracized, and demonized. Get the fuck out of here, you pretentious prick. But if I say that, apparently I'm the asshole. I'm just saying. I don't see where I'm morally the one in the wrong on this. Like, I really don't.